It's always great to have Jeff with us. And this week we've got Matt Herdon, product manager at Nautel, and we're going to talk about the AUI. It's going to be a nice chat.
No,
Jeff?
Matt's the smart one, but and he'll end up doing all the heavy lifting. I'd say I'm just here. I'm the Abbott to his Costello, if you will. Jeff Wilson's thrown the exhibit code in the chat. As you said, it's I think $50 a head now. If we really like you and you ply us with beer, we may have one or two exhibitor passes left, but we tend to try to avoid giving those out to anybody that doesn't have a direct affiliation. Matt, you had a slide deck to show, I think, that you wanted
Yes,
to
I do.
run through. I thought you
Sure.
did. So Barry,
Yeah.
you're going to want to make sure sharing is turned on.
Yep.
It is. I see a little green share screen thing.
Yay. Well,
bottom.
I'm going to turn it over to Matt and let him drive the bus, and I may even disappear and go refill my coffee in a second.
So I'm going to click on that and share that if that's okay. There we go. Can
There
you
you
see
go.
that okay? Yeah?
Yes,
Sure.
Okay. Let's put it into present mode. That would be a little prettier.
Excellent.
So yeah, we're going to talk about the AUI, and of course I had to find the cutest elephant possible, but this is the elephant in the room, which is, where is it? And we've been promising it for so long. It's gone past any kind of humorousness, but I thought I'd give it a shot with this cute elephant.
Well, now, and I mean, you remember too that in 2019 we said we'd have it by the next NAB. We had to create a global pandemic, lost 2 NABs, and still missed it. So the elephant's not inappropriate.
Yes, I figured I'd meet this one head on. So yeah, yeah. So where is it? And so here's my excuse. I mean, reasons. And so these are the goals and hurdles that we've faced over the last years, like 4 years. Anyone that's been involved, the few that have been involved in the beta tests, because what I did as a strategy was to kind of allow the beta to go out in small batches, and just in case something went wrong. Well, that was a good move because things went wrong. So the first thing that happened was we ran into a variety of firmware releases on the VS, which is the one that we started off with, because we knew it was going to be the hardest. So that was part of the strategy as well. And that was really the root of it. So we kept running into that, and we had a beta 1, we had a beta 2, we had a beta 2.1, and each time we learned something new very quickly. And then we thought we would have a beta 3 last year, and that firmware stuff and the bootloader just proved to be very, very challenging. So we thought, we got to get this right. I mean, if people start installing this and bad things happen, that would be a nightmare for everyone. And of course, in terms of, well, what about the GV AUI or this or that? And it's like, well, it's a ripple effect. And we had chosen the VS because it was hard to do, because it was deployed on thousands. There's over 7,000 VS transmitters in the world. And we figured, well, that's the best pool to try this out on. A lot of people have backups. A lot of people have bench units. And so these are great places to test stuff. And so as everyone who's ever seen an invite, I have a big red warning label that says, don't install this if you really, really depend on your transmitter, because something may happen, and we will have to help you resolve it. But that was a big challenge. So that was really the big one. The other things include, taking old hardware like the VS, and I think, Jeff, the last time we were talking about this, it was like 13 years ago, maybe 2010, maybe, I think.
2010 was about the first release, 4 hardware platforms, 4 or 5 firmware editions, and 2 main bootloader releases that I know of.
Yeah. So that's old. And the example that I give is that when I do a demo, you'll see some modulation on the AUI being shown, and that's being driven by an iPod Touch, and it's a first generation iPod Touch. I think it almost predated the iPhone, and that was released in 2010. So we're talking about that sort of age of stuff, and so putting brand new stuff like HTML5 onto old technology like that can be incredibly challenging. It used to be a bit easier, but the world's accelerating in terms of what it'll allow and accommodate. And so that takes time. It has risk. Some stuff doesn't work. We'll talk about that. We also set the quality target as high as possible. We didn't want to have off-air situations, so that's really a goal of is a no-brainer of a goal, table stakes, if you like. And then we had also set the bar pretty high with the Flash version. In terms of features, it started off actually pretty impressively in the first incarnation, and as it grew, it gained more features and eventually to what it is today. And so to match that is, most people don't want to give up. You're giving someone a feature, they don't want to give it up. So that was another goal that we set ourselves. Was it the right thing to do? I still think it is the right thing to do, because I think stepping back to an old version or a simpler version of an AUI may not have worked. We could have gotten away with that maybe 10 years ago. Started with a simple version, while Flash actually still worked.
For what it's worth, the first VS shipped in July 2010 and coincidentally went to Alex Hartman.
There you go.
Alex collects serial number 1 of all of our things.
That's right. So those are the goals and hurdles, and as you can tell, they're pretty extensive. So this is where we're at right now. So this is a VS 300, actually mine, the one that's sitting on the wall over there. That kind of, I have a hard time to, that little black to gray, dark gray blob there, that's a VS 300 mounted vertically on the wall. Keeps me warm in the winter. That's what this one is. It's running modulation. I'm going to show you this one live in a second, and it's running the beta 3, which we just released this week. Then there's the GV10, the touch screen off the GV10 that is actually is on its way to NAB right now. So that's where you'll see that. So this is a kind of an alpha build for the GV. And then the third one that I can show you here is the VX. And so this one is, I think this is actually, this is actually one that's in our labs. It's a customer service one. And so that's and you can see that they are in fact identical. They look slightly differently. That's because they're being rendered at different resolutions, and the screen rearranges itself according to the resolutions, but they can all look identical. So those are the threes ones. And so with VS, the development status, and we'll get to questions, and I know this is a bit of a presentation, but the development status is on the VS, we've got the focus on testing and quality. We're in the beta phase. The VX is shipping, that's available now. And then the GV, I kind of very fluffily put it at about 95% feature complete. It might even be better than that, because one of the things that's important about the software for the AUI is it's actually a common code base. So the same code base runs on all of the platforms. And there may be a few little productization differences, but on the whole, it's the same code base. So so GV is probably better than 95% because we're close to 100% on the other two. And then the rollout, because that's obviously the most exciting part about it, is the beta 3 is released. It's in the hands of a number of people already. If you want it, you just send me an email. And the GV series is an internal alpha. We actually did an NAB build, which is the one that's on the floor, and development on a GV20 at the factory is ongoing. And then the VX series, the 150 to 2 kilowatts are released and available. Those are shipping. I think we're over 100 shipped. And then the 3 to 6 kilowatt models of the VX series, we're hoping to see that in the first half of this year, sometime. I don't know when. And that's internal alpha. So you'll see that one. There's a live running one in a rack at NAB. We've got a 3 kilowatt and a 6 kilowatt there. And the 6 kilowatt has a glass or acrylic lid on it. So you kind of get to see what's inside the box, which is kind of cool. And then further down the road, we've got the NX, the MV Lite, and the NV that will come along. And those I don't have even approximate dates for, because really we just have to get past the VS and the GV first, and then we can sort of think sanely about that rather than me pretending that it's going to be a particular time frame.
Matt, one of the things that you're doing that I understand, which is holding some of this up, is the touchscreen aspect.
Touchscreen was surprisingly tricky, and I'll come to what's in a second about what's not in the initial releases. But the touchscreen, the hard part is getting drivers for the touchscreens on the GV and the NV and NX high power. But we've got them working, and so we don't expect it to be impossible. So that's good. So while we're talking about things that don't work, or it's not there yet, I'll move to the next slide. The HD radio support, it's mostly complete. We had it fully, I think, pretty much fully working in the VS, and then for some reason something was not quite good enough, so we actually pulled it back out of the beta 3, and there'll be a beta 4 on the VS to do the HD radio support. But it is, for the most part, it's working fine. It's going through most of the regression tests without too much trouble. Mobile device optimization, when I just showed the screens and they had different layouts, that's part of something we called responsive design. So as you change the resolution of a HTML page or the size of it, then it will rejig itself. The actual layout of the page will change, and that's called responsive design. And if you look at it on a phone, the default mode on a phone is not as pretty as it could be. But if you switch into desktop mode, then you can actually get a perfectly nice looking screen on it. Especially if it's a nice big phone, which I think a lot of people have because they're easier to look at. And then the last one is a tricky one, which is in the same class as the touch screen, which is the audio player, because the version of Linux that we're using is Yocto, and for one reason or another, it didn't come with an audio driver. So we've had to engage a company to develop one for us, and this is a kernel level piece of development that has to happen, and it's not a cakewalk by any chance. So we're, if I were a betting person, the VS is in the risky area, and then the other ones that are on the same processor, which is the MV Lite and the NX low power, would also be a little bit risky, and then the other ones like VX and GV and MV should be less of an issue. But hope is not lost on all the platforms, so that's I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I can see Jeff is probably smirking there. Anyway,
I did that out loud, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. But that's the audio player, and it is tough. It's tough, and we know it's a popular feature for a bunch of reasons, and so we just need to do the best we can to get it to work. So the next thing I figured I would do is actually do a demo. So let me flip across to, there it is. So you can see that fine. That's my my AUI. This is a live AUI. This is the one that's in the corner of my room here. I can illustrate the sizing aspect of it by just zooming the screen a little bit, and you can see that it went from having this big window panel here and two here. It will change from that to the big panel plus 4 small panels, and you can put whatever you want in here. So if I want to, I can go ahead and put, you know, like the meters here or something like that. So it's configurable, and for your login for this particular thing, it will remember that. You can also just edit what's there as opposed to just deleting it the way I did. There you go. Wherever you see this little gear icon, and that'll get Jeff going again. He loves icons. That means that you can configure that particular panel. So that's a configuration icon, and it lets you to add and take away things on there. I'll give you a little tour. And at the top, we've got the top bar has tells you what the active preset is, and also lets you choose a different preset if you want. So we could switch to tower maintenance, click on that, flip across. You'll see that the preset name at the top changes. So there's that. We've got the date, the time, and also the hamburger menu. So this gets you to everything else that's on the AUI. This is the equivalent of hitting the icon on the old AUI that would pop up that kind of dialogue in the middle of the screen. But this now it's sort of more conveniently off to one side in a more sort of web app kind of standard way. You can see that we've got forward power, reflective power, and temperature and modulation. It looks like modulation stopped for some reason, so not quite sure why. But if I want, I can turn.
You change presets to one that's using the composite audio input, and you don't have composite audio.
Good point. Thank you. I usually switch back to the to the preset that I was on, so that kind of threw me off there for a bit. Now it's not coming back. But
now you've just blown up your iPad.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. The clock's still ticking. Anywho, let's see if we can turn it on. That will soon tell us. Yeah, you should be able to hear that in the background. And we can see that the forward power is now up to the almost up to the set point now. And so all the things are bouncing. So that's good. And then we can go ahead and turn this off again. And we can see that there's an alarm here. If we were on a different resolution and we didn't want to have that, we could jump to the alarms page. Say this is not the alarms panel. We can go to the alarms page, which allows us to look at all the alarms that would be here. And then there's a little you can filter what's there, so you can hide alarms that you want to ignore. So say there's some sort of an alarm that's just irritating and you really don't want to pay much attention to it, then you can hide it that way. So what I would do now is I'll just walk through the menu. That's probably the simplest way to go through it. There's a meters page which has the meters for the exciter and the controller just listed, and because it's HTML as opposed to Flash, like the old one, you can actually grab stuff off the screen. So I could just do a Control-C to copy this and paste it into Excel or into a text file or whatever it is that I want to grab that information at this moment. There's some other reports that we'll get to in a second, and we'll have a look at that. Obviously, an important feature is the other presets, and you can manage your presets here. We can go ahead and edit a preset. And we have this little radiating N icon here that tells you to wait. And then here are all the different sections for the preset that we can adjust. But you'll notice that it just works as you would kind of expect it to, based on the types of web apps that you're using in a browser or on your phone probably. The settings on the old AUI, there was two sets of settings. One was in the user settings, the other one was system settings. I think, Jeff, you have an assumption that you usually make.
Yeah, you've got a 50-50 chance of getting it right, so you'll be wrong 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And I've been consistent with that for several years of running a VS1. So yeah, I was happy to see those go together.
Yeah. So we pushed that together, and you know, so all of the things are here. This is the Orban. This unit has an Orban. If the Orban wasn't installed on this particular machine, then this menu would just be grayed out, like the HD option down here. So this unit does not have HD, and so that you can get to know your menus really well and they don't change underneath you, everything stays there regardless of the feature set that you have on this system. So if I didn't have audio processing, it would just be grayed out. And so you'd go, oh yeah, I don't have audio processing. It kind of reminds you that. Exciter TCXO and so on. All of this stuff. This is obviously not editable, it's informational, tells you your MAC address and other information like that. You can set up your notifications. This supports the new Google security method, which uses an app password. So that's what's in here along, I think it's a 16-digit app password that it generates for you. So you give Google permission, or this app, sorry, to you give it permission from Google to interact and send emails. You can add a security certificate if you want to use HTTPS. It's full support for SNMP, Spectrum Mask, and then probably my favorite one is this one, which is we can change to Fahrenheit. So you'll see that the top bar is now in Fahrenheit instead of Celsius. So that should make the bottom half of North America much happier. And then our threshold settings. And here you can see that as we make a change, if normally if no change has been made, then the save icon is just gray. If you make a change, then it's blue. So it sort of reminds you, by the way, you haven't saved this yet. So you should click on it to save. And that's where you can do that. Time, you can set your NTP server, you can set your time zone, or you can set it for UTC. And then transmitter info, I really like it. It tells you what model you've got, tells you its MAC address. There's also a unique ID there, which is a nice long number that is independent of the MAC address. So that number will survive, and so you can always know what that actual unit was, because the MAC address is actually on one of the boards inside the transmitter, and if you replace that board, you get a new MAC address. So this allows you to still know that this is this transmitter. Transmitter name and call sign I really like. It's a nice catch-all for naming this transmitter in a way that makes sense to you. It's not tied to any, you don't have to put anything in here, but I think it's a great way to identify it. You'll also notice that this transmitter name call sign string appears up in the tab at the top. So if I had opened another transmitter on a second tab, then I would be able to see that one is AUI-GV10 or whatever. So it allows you to have, you could have a whole bunch of them up on the screen at the same time in different tabs, and you'd be able to pick the right one. Serial number, people have asked if we could auto-populate this, but that's really hard for the way that we manufacture things. But this does allow you the convenience of entering it into a serial number field that you can save. And then if you're talking to customer service, you can tell them what the serial number is. So when you do your installation of the new AUI on your systems, I encourage you to put your serial number in there, because then it's really easy to get it, because otherwise you got to go out in the mountain and look on the back of it, or go through your records and find out what it was. Users, default was with admin and viewer. Admin has all the rights and the viewer has only the ability to look at things. So that's that, but you can create other users, you can clone a user and so on. So pretty normal stuff. Remote IO is complete except for site control. Site control will come, I think, in the next release, but the digital inputs and outputs and analog outputs are all there and operational. And if I go back briefly to this one here, you'll see there's an icon up here for reports. It's hard to see because I have the super big mouse pointer, but there it says reports on the hover tip. And if I click on that, it'll take me to the reports page. I can also get to the reports page by clicking on the reports menu item. And reports, this is like your logs. You can download this and it'll download to a CVS file. You could then go to that location and you could open that file and it will tell you. And there's all your stuff. So, and you can then sort of filter that and work with that to get the information you want. Then we can see the active preset. So again, if you've set up a whole bunch of settings in the active preset, you can download that to report. So you've got a hard copy or a soft copy of all the settings that you're using in that preset. Same thing for meters and also the settings. You can see here that that's actually a bug where this label has not been translated yet. But it does always remind me that this system is also what we call internationalized, which means that it is set up so that it can be translated into other languages. So when the time is right and this is stabilized, we would then take the file, which is a YAML file, which is a special file format, and we can convert that. We can have that translated into Spanish or Portuguese or German or whatever, and this is really the internal name of this field is softwareversions.title, and the English version would actually be, more like software version and read like an English string. And then last but not least is the software, and this is a good reference if you're running into issues. You can reference this for customer service and say, well, what version of the software are you running? Oh, I'm running 6.0 beta 3. Okay. And then it lists all the versions of the different plugins. And then here's the page. So this is where you would do your upgrades. In the initial releases for VS, it's all done through OS recovery from the front panel UI. But in the future, you would be able to browse to a file that was on your desktop and upload it to the system and then go ahead and perform the upgrade from there. Or you could stick a USB in the back of it, which of course you have to be at the site for, and then do the upgrade from that. And that's basically it. It does show you the user up in this main menu. It does show you the software version down here. And then the transmitter serial number is also noted in the main menu as well. So this kind of a handy shortcut to some of the important information. And let's think. And I think that's pretty good for the demo. Are there any questions while I've got the screen up there?
If you have any questions, feel free to unmute your microphone with the space bar or alternate A, or raise your hand and I'll call on you, or just jump up and down and we'll figure something out.
Okay, this is Richard. I do have a question.
Yep.
On the email feature, the existing AUI, as far as using Gmail or other commonly available ways to get notifications, as many people know, hasn't worked for a while, right? I'm wondering what is new about the Gmail verification that has either fixed this, or is it unfixable?
Interestingly enough, it looks like it's completely fixed. So on the VS, for whatever reason, there seemed to be a lot of, I think there's no way to sugarcoat it, a lot of flakiness around the IP connectivity, I think. Jeff, you can correct me on the details, but, and that resulted in the email configuration and doing the notifications, and also SNMP and other things, anything to do with the Ethernet connectivity, were flaky. And for some people it kind of worked, and for some people it definitely did not work. So for a lot of times, and I think Jeff's one of them, is people would find a version of the software that worked for them, and they would stick with it and resist every temptation to upgrade to anything else ever. From what I can tell, and my VS300 has been working for 3 years running. As soon as I had an AUI that was HTML5, I upgraded it to that when it was working well enough. And that's probably more like 2 years. And it's never really skipped a beat on this. When they messed it up, they knew why they had messed it up, and they fixed it in the next build. So I'm generally very happy with the network capabilities and the stability. And this is on an otherwise untouched VS. It's not like we went and fixed the hardware or something like that. It was a software bug, and it seems to have gone away.
And
I would
it's
probably,
funny because
yeah.
a lot of the original flakiness, and I mean, it's gotten to the point now where the support guys will start blaming the network, because part of that's my fault. We're fiber end to end at our site, so ours has been rock solid. But that's not 100% of the case by any stretch.
Right.
And definitely the new AUI with the lower payload should help quite a bit.
Yeah, it's been an interesting change, because I think it probably is because the operating system is new, and it came with a whole bunch of new drivers, and they just work better. There's something going on where we replaced something, and I don't think it was a firmware, because it was before we started messing with the firmware. So I think that this was about a relationship with the operating system and the actual AUI code.
That the software category that you were showing there had quite a number of software versions for different plugins and aspects.
Mm-hmm.
If someone calls for assistance, the first thing they're going to ask you is what software version you have and which one do you read out. Well, Jeff was talking about 4.3. Where is that? Why is that not the first one on the list?
So the equivalent of 4. It is the equivalent of 4.3 is on here, which is the 6.0.0 beta 3. That is the software build that goes on to the system. So so these versions are actually what we call plugins. So the software architecture is we have a framework, and then you just add plugins. if you went in and found the scheduler plugin in the Linux operating system, if you actually went into the file repository and deleted it or renamed it, then your scheduler would simply stop working, or the presets. So these are discrete little bits of code that sit on the hard drive, and make the whole thing work. And that's
Okay,
just
so
how they
where's
architect.
the 6.0 then?
Up at the top there. Oops, sorry, I moved it here.
Ah, okay, OS, got it.
Yeah, so the very, very top. And if you were to go to upgrades, it has it on that page as well. Yeah.
So I have a continuing complaint about the VS300, and as the scheduler randomly loses an hour. And the only way to fix that is to change the time zone and put it back again. This is critical because KXSF and KSFP are two low powers that share the same frequency, and the scheduler switches frequencies. So when it loses its mind and both stations no longer comply with their licenses.
Right.
I was promised 3 years ago that would be fixed. So will that be fixed in this version 6?
As I say, this is a whole new code base. So I can't promise anything because of course that's out of my control. But the scheduler is a whole new code base. So as far as I know, we tried to, essentially it's kind of like black box programming, where we know what the old scheduler did and we made it do the same thing when we rewrote it. And I doubt they grabbed stuff that didn't work and said, hey, let's make it not work this way as well. So my hope is that as you upgrade to this, that you will find that the scheduler works. I think the only bug that I've heard of recently, which I think is known and they're going to fix, is that if you had something scheduled for February 29th, there would be it would have a little bit of a mental problem. But that's going to get fixed as well. So on the whole, I think it's pretty solid.
No, it has caused a lot of problems within the organization.
I can imagine.
Now, since I have a lot of gray in my beard, I believe in 12x7s and relays, and those didn't do weird things.
Right.
What about scheduling for something beyond a year? So you put something in for November the 11th, for instance, where you want some silence, and you have to do it every year, otherwise it seems to forget.
I don't know about that one, and I don't know. I think that seems to ring a bell. That I think it could be that is more to do with the hardware than it is to do with the software, which sounds like a cop-out, but I certainly, my recollection, and I'll check on it. I'll check on the scheduler and let Barry know and get back to you on that one for year to year. But it definitely rings a bell. I know that definitely was a problem. I just don't know if that's been something that was fixed or couldn't be fixed. So
it was. I know it was brought up as a request.
Yeah.
In the chat, Richard had asked if it'd be possible to upgrade a plugin without installing the whole OS. And so the only time you do a whole OS recovery is if you're going from one major revision to the next. Even with the current software, if you're doing a minor upgrade, it's USB code or a software update button on the AUI. It's not a full OS recovery. So yeah. That won't change. On the VX. It does change because it's all side loaded with the mount, whatever you call that, software package that does the software updates. Mender. Thank you. I'll never remember that.
And actually, Mender is intended to work on this. And so the thing about the plugins is that this allows you to help customer service to know what specific plugins you have. And Mender, allows you to have incremental updates. So we might have a very small update that you install using this upgrade method here on the second tab. And you just download it from our FTP site or whatever, and you add it. So this would not require an OS recovery in order to upgrade this to, say, 6.2 or whatever. And in fact, it's quite possible that now that we have Mender on the AUI, it's quite possible that what Jeff just said is actually not true, which we might be able to get you to 7.0 without doing an OS recovery, because this technology, the Mender technology, is actually pretty cool. And one of the things it does that it actually, and we've yet to test it on the VS because it requires a little bit of horsepower, is that it has an A and a B installation location. So if we're running off active partition A, then you would install your upgrade to the inactive partition B. And then once it's completed that installation, then you would flip the active bit over to the B, and now you'd be running the new version. So your off-air time is going to be just a matter of seconds, if not a minute or something like that, where it might have to reboot or something like that. Right. If that B installation, that new installation fails, it flips back to A. But if it's successful, then A becomes the inactive, and if you did a new install, you would install to A. And so they just do swapsies like that.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to take issue too with Bill's comment about the relays. I've taken too many calls from Gentner remote controls that have been hit off and turned right back on when the relay bounced back. So, relays are not infallible either, although they're infallible much more, or they're fallible much more predictably, I guess would be a better way of putting it. David had asked a good question. Dave Bialik asked, could you save maintenance logs in this? And so this is not a current feature, but jot it down on your side notepad. I know you've got a notepad by your hand. That it would be really cool to have a notepad-like feature where you could enter your maintenance logs into the transmitter controller.
Yeah, that's I have heard that one before, and maybe it was the last time I was here. Yeah, and the reports feature, which is obviously the opposite. That's blurting out stuff. But I think that this area here is something that could be very interesting to expand upon it and make it more flexible, more powerful, and so on. One of the things that people have asked for as well is that to kind of join the notifications at the hip with a report of some sort, so that I think FCC is kind of every 3 hours you want to sort of download some sort of specific information and send it off via email to be logged. That might be quite a valuable tool to have and save a lot of headaches, that have that just like a cron job. It just kicks it out, kicks it out, kicks it out.
Yeah, and I mean, we've all heard the stories about the jock where the station's been off air for 6 hours and you go in and the meter readings for the last 4 shifts are just exactly what the meter readings for the 4 shifts previous were. And I see Reggie's got a hand up here too.
Unmute.
Okay, they're unmuted. Yeah, I got a question regarding, again, in the upgrade or the installation, moving up to the newer version, which would be a major software upgrade. On that, does it hold the network settings over, or is that something where you need to reset all the network settings after you do the full installation process on this?
So when you're going from the Flash version to the new HTML5 version, that is an OS recovery that you do from the front panel, and all of your settings except for a few that are stored in firmware like presets, will be reset. And so you will need to go in, set your network and so on, and you're essentially you're going to redo what you did in your quick start guide, but because it retains the presets, then you don't have to worry about that stuff. Sorry, I'm getting a bit tangled up here. um, if you've upgraded to the AUI, the HTML5 AUI, and you are then going to do a further update, say from the 6.0 beta 3, and you wanted to go to the 6.1, that, and you're going to use Mender, this interface here, then all of your settings should be retained. There should be no loss of information.
But the original one, I'll probably want to do a bunch of screenshots before I start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's and that's one of the things that we have in the upgrade guide is like grab all your settings, get ready, and then do your update.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
David's asked a question that, and I'll be the first to admit I'm the guy that proves that those who can do and those who can't teach. But does the new AUI have an HTTP API? Can I get it info via curl or similar? And I'll be the first to admit I don't even know what that means.
I don't believe so. So it's kind of like having an SNMP interface. I think that you're talking about having an API that allows you to get to the information that's there. At this point, we don't. I mean, that's a cool idea. I like it. You know, that's but SNMP is how you would do it right now, which is not the same, but it's conceptually similar. I hope that answers the question.
I don't know if you answered this one or not, but earlier it was asked, what's the typical installation time for this new version?
40 minutes roughly. And it's a little bit generous because when you're going from the Flash version to this one, it might have to update the firmware, in which case that adds a bit of time to it. But what happens is that it does all the installation. It reboots, I think, 2 times total, unless it's doing firmware stuff. And then once it's done that, there's a little bit of processing it has to do afterwards, which is all for the AUI. So once it's complete, then and what I do is to check whether it's done doing the installation is that I open a browser and I go to the IP address that I can see on the front panel UI and keep pinging it until the AUI pops up. And once the AUI pops up, then it's working.
And so how much airtime is lost?
I would bank on, I'm gonna say 40 minutes because you're gonna need to go in and do your settings and stuff like that. So this is not an insignificant investment. So you're going to want to pick your time to do that. Once you've got onto this platform, which is a major upgrade, and you're doing the Mender stuff, then as I said, it's a matter of seconds. If I don't think it's minutes, but I think it's a very quick thing to flip from A to B.
Any other questions from the field here?
So in the KXSF and KSFP application, the VS300 is actually located on the second level of Sutro Tower, which is not an easy place to get to. So but this looks to me like something you really want to be in front of it and not try to do it remotely.
Oh, for the initial upgrade, absolutely.
Yeah, you cannot do it remotely. Yeah, the OS recovery has to be done right there.
With a thumb drive in the back routine.
Exactly. Yeah. I've done that.
The minor
times.
upgrades or even most of the major ones afterwards can be done remotely. But
yeah,
this one, this one absolutely you need to be there.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of quick questions regarding audio. You mentioned the Orban card being on board in a lot of the machines, and I'm wondering if the methodology for making subtle changes to the processing will be the same as it is in the present AUI, or will it be a little more dynamic? And I'll let you answer that first.
Yeah, so with the Orban, and we are constrained a little bit by the Orban hardware itself, it's not the most speedy conversation that would go on. You can only edit the current preset, the active preset. So in this case, I've got jazz, which is a factory preset. So I would not be able to edit that one. So it would force me to save it as a new one, like Matt's jazz or whatever. But if I choose this one, which is a custom preset, it'll switch over to it. You can see that it's the hamsters are doing their thing. And then once this is selected,
What you doing? Oh, sucker.
I can hear you. Then it uses the less more. So if you're going into, say, AGC, then we've changed the cosmetic appearance of it, but it's basically the same. So you can turn this thing on and off. It's got the slider type controls and then these other ones here. So it just goes ahead. And the changes for that are immediate. It will do that. And then you can go ahead and make that permanent. And then now I've tweaked that one value.
That's exactly what I was looking for, that the changes are dynamic as opposed to having to save and activate. So that's
I believe that. So I believe that is the case. So I would I'm going to have to check that one because that was my understanding. But if that's really the crux of it, then
that is the case on the VX. If you make a change, it asks you to confirm that you want to make the change, and then it does the change.
Right.
So and the cool thing is you can switch presets without going off air now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So the follow-up question, again, still with audio. I know you're working on the backup audio, the playlist type of thing. Will it be similar to what we have now, where we create a playlist and you can only do that by having a USB in the back of the transmitter, or will there be some method of updating that information so that you can change the playlist remotely?
That part I don't know, because I think I've only seen a mock-up or a very early working, not even working prototype, because we don't have an audio driver for it yet. So they did the user interface for it, and the user interface was very similar to the original Flash one. That was the benchmark. The prototype, if you like, was to use the Flash version. And obviously the audio player is used for a number of things. One is to do as a backup audio playing from, say, a USB device, but it's also for streaming and all the other sources. I would say that if we get an audio driver for the VS, that we will probably take a long, hard look at everything that the audio player is going to do for us, and then decide what, and pick and choose from that. I'm not sure if we could assume that it's going to do everything that the old one did, or it might do a little bit more, it might do a little bit different.
Now, having said that, the old one, you absolutely can put music on the old one through your internet connection. You don't have to have the music loaded onto the USB stick.
That's true.
Because
I've done that.
Yeah, I do that and build the playlist remotely all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's kludgy and slow, but it's functional.
Yeah.
And there's several other messages in chat. Davey Alec asked if there's a specific browser and version that's needed. The answer is no, it's browser agnostic.
Correct.
David Clan asked if there's stages of upgrades required, for example, running an old version 4.x.y. So the short answer is you'll need to be at a version 4. something platform.
Yeah.
And I mean, customer service has a preference just because it gives them a known starting point. But if you've got to the version 4 platform, you should be able to one-step it. If you're pre-version 4, like 2.3 or 1. anything, which I know several people are, I'm looking at y'all right now, then there's going to be multiple steps in those cases.
Yeah. And if you attempt to do the OS recovery on an older version, it will stop you. It will say no.
Yeah. So you do it. Let's see. Audio loss. GNMP allowing SNMTP server use again. Gmail. what is our Gmail workaround? Because Gmail, I know it's working on the VX. I just forget how we did it.
Sorry, you're talking about notifications?
No, well, yeah, it was secured email.
Yeah. So if you're doing notifications, you want to set up the email server. Then what you do is you go into Gmail for that account. So in this particular one, I have a demo account called transmitters.demo@gmail.com. And you go in there and say, I want to create a trusted app, and give me a password for that trusted app. So it then says, okay, great. And you name that thing. You now go back into here with the password that it gives you, which is this password here. And you then dump that in there. And now, because it has this password, which is not the same password as my transmitters.demo Gmail account, this is a separate one. It's an app password. And that is how Gmail has required that you do your authentication for using Gmail as a notification server. That makes sense?
Yep.
It does take a little while. It can take on the VS, because the hamsters are old and tired. It can take up to about 2 minutes. I find it typically is about 1.5 minutes, and the more times I do it, the quicker it gets. But they kind of wake up a bit. But it's consistently working, so that I like, and that's really the important part. On the more powerful processors, like a GV, it's about 3 seconds. So, you know, big difference based on horsepower. The ARM processor that's in the VS is quite modest.
We have a question from an Andy, whoever he is. Can you use the same Gmail password for multiple transmitters at multiple sites, or is it a different one required for each specific transmitter?
I think you can do it for multiple ones. I haven't tried it, but oh, wait a second. No, I have tried it. I've done it. I've had it set up for my VX and also for my VS. So I had both transmitters here at one point, and I just used the same password because it's, I don't know. I guess it's an app password, not a hardware password.
We're coming up to the hour, so I'm going to make a quick announcement. And that is for those of you that have written in asking for the links. We do have a Tuesday reminder service, so that if you send me an email every Tuesday, I'll let you know what the program is for the week. And so that is available to you. And if you want to see this program, it'll be on YouTube tomorrow. Right now, it's still live on YouTube, www.youtube.com/thebdrnet. So just to let you know that there. Matt, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I thought it was
Totally cool. Totally cool.
in.
Got to run the business. So yeah, I while you were talking, I just popped up this other slide here, which is this is where we are at NAB. You can see the AUI running live. You can see the VX series. But if you're interested in beta testing the AUI, that's my email address. And then this is our other links. We have our webinars, our newsletter, our YouTube, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, BDR down at the bottom there. So I can leave this on whichever screen people feel is more useful.
Isn't there one there to watch Jeff 24/7? Or is that a subscription? That's a subscription link.
Yes, that's on.
The funny
that's
thing
on
is
a different channel.
I did enable streaming on my YouTube channel the other day, just as a test for streaming NUG next week. Oh God, next week. But maybe I should get started
One other
on that.
question regarding for the VS series.
Yep.
Okay, because we got a couple of them. Do you have any kind of estimated or even a broad time frame when it may move out of the beta to being on the website to download for the VS series, or is that still kind of up in the air?
The weasel in me says yes, it's still up in the air, because it's one of those things that I as a product manager, I don't want to ship it until it's ready. And I know that there are challenges that it has. We have to get the HD finished. We have to get the remote IO. We have to get the software upgrade thing all tested and implemented.
Right. Like our VSs are 300 miles remote in Alaska. I really don't like data versions.
Yeah. So my hope, if I were to give a kind of a real ballpark, I would say I'd want it in the summertime.
Okay.
Northern hemisphere. And so that's my hope, is that this summer we're going to see the VS go out, the GV go out, and that we'll be well on our way with all the other ones that we.
Right. Okay. Well, this gives me at least a little bit idea just on future planning.
Yeah. And I'm anticipating that the beta 3 is going to tell us a huge amount. So if everyone's being successful with, and I think I've got 8 or more people who are already invited and sent the links for the software. If we're seeing success across the board, then that just emboldens us a bit more, and really lights the fire under us to get the HD stuff and things sorted, so that we could have the beta 4 done and dusted as soon as possible. But we've got to get GV underway as well. So there's, it's one team working on all the different platforms, but it's, so that's where the challenge is.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how many of you remember Charlie Morgan, who was the vice president for engineering at Susquehanna Radio. Charlie's hardcore philosophy was, you're not allowed to buy version 1. He wanted somebody else to deal with that. He said, I'll consider version 2, but don't even ask about version 1.
Right. And my background is I worked for Borland Software. I worked for Rational Software. I worked for Active State Software. My background is all software. And so I try to be as rigorous as I can be with how we release stuff. And sometimes it doesn't work out the way we want it, but this is, I would agree that we're really on, version 2 now, and version, with the beta 3 is what I would call a version 2 in terms of the basic functionality, because we've learned some very hard lessons on that version 1.
And that's why you call it version 6.
Well, version 6, because the VS software had got, and actually most of the Flash software was at 5. So it's just continuing on. So, but yeah.
A funny way to avoid version 1, isn't it?
It is. It's a good way.
Borland,
but I appreciate.
Borland had a bad end, didn't it?
I think most of it got purchased by someone. And Philippe Kahn went off and did a PDA kind of thing. What was that called? Starfish software. Yeah, I was with Ashton Tate when Borland acquired us, so it was exciting times in Scotts Valley, and so yeah.
And Borland stock went very bad, just like CBS. Odyssey is not very wealthy right now.
Yeah. Yep. The world changes.
It's amazing to think of a company as big as CBS and Entercom and putting them together, and to look at the stock price, and anybody that put all their retirement funds there, ouch.
Yeah.
So anybody else have something for Matt or for Jeff? Looks like the AUI is ready for prime time, although some of the features are going to be
pretty close, yeah.
Ready-ish.
Pretty-ish.
Ready-ish.
I missed about the mobile version, for both Android and Apple, or for one or the other.
So here's the thing. We're not supporting either Android or Apple. We're supporting anything that has a browser on a phone. So we're not doing apps. we're only doing, so when I run it on my phone, if I open this up and go to the AUI, oh, that's not going to the right place. But if I open it up, I'm going to open it up on my browser on my phone. So you don't have to go to the Play Store or anything like that. You open up Chrome or you open up Safari, boom, it works. So the reason for that was that apps make you beholden to the App Store's rules and when you have to do a new release, and also when you have to deprecate a release, and we didn't want any of that. So we've stuck with it. It's a pure HTML5 app, web app. Good.
Now, that said, when it's done, theoretically, it will auto size for whatever screen you're looking at it on, whether it's a iPad, a browser, or a laptop, or in my case, iPhone or Android, depending on which one I'm swearing at today.
And it actually already does it. It just does it poorly. And that's, so here I've just, I think I'm on the right network. Yeah, I'm on the home network. So when it pops up, I'll do it. But basically what happens is that there we go. So there's the login screen, and that's on for that VS behind me. It by default, when you go through your normal browser, it will go, oh, you want the web app. You want the mobile version. And because the software that's on the transmitter knows about mobile, it will say, oh, here you go. And it'll look terrible because we haven't done anything with the mobile specific version. But if you go into the settings on, certainly on my Android, and the same thing on Safari, there's a setting here that oh, no, you're not going to be able to see it. But it says desktop site, and you just choose desktop site, and you get to have what you see on the screen with me adjusted with, all the other stuff. So it's pretty straightforward. It works really well. And then, so having the mobile optimized version is really just putting the cherry on top, and it'll look better. But if you've got a reasonable size phone like this one, this is a Samsung 9 Plus. If your screen is that big and you've got good glasses, then it's not a problem at all. You can just use the desktop one. Tablet looks great. Laptop, fantastic. Yeah, it's all good.
So again, not to confuse anyone, but to make it clear, they have 40 minutes to put version 6.0 on the transmitter firmware, and then they have to put whatever they're going to put on their desktop or their cell phone.
No, nothing goes on your desktop or cell phone. You just open your web browser.
You open your browser, and then you type in the IP address after 40 minutes, and it's there.
Okay, so there is no app like we've been using, right?
It's a zero install. It actually works the same way that the Flash one works, except Flash didn't work on phones mostly, in the sense that it downloads into the browser an app. In this case, it's an HTML app. In the old case, it was a Flash app. And then it says, okay, now I'm going to run it.
So you just make a bookmark.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you've got a whole slew of transmitters, you can make multiple bookmarks. And then when you open up your browser, you can just click on all the bookmarks, and boom, 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 you've got your mini NOC going. You can see all of your transmitters. I've actually had 4 transmitters, AUIs on a large screen, just sort of tessellated. Also, I'm actually able to see all 4 of them at the same time. And I'll be doing that at NAB. Yeah, it's, big screens are nice for that.
On Chrome, you could also have all your bookmarks opened and then have your browser configured to launch in the same configuration as closed.
There you
go.
So
it'll just automatically load it all when you turn it on in the morning. Now you still have your login screen.
Yeah.
Very nice. Gentlemen, appreciate this.
Now,
You're
Ben says
welcome.
any browser, even Antiques, and I'm not sure if you're going to get it to work on Netscape Navigator.
You won't, I guarantee you. So the Flash app, the legacy app that a number of you might still be using to use the old AUI, that one actually is a old browser that supports Flash inside an app. And that's how it is. It's all wrapped up securely inside this app. And I tried running the new AUI in that app, and you cannot, because the browser is too old. It needs to support HTML5, and if it doesn't support it, then forget it.
Now, the cool thing about that app is that when you do upgrade, you may not want to get rid of that. John Keane called me the other day asking if I knew anything that could read Flash in a browser to run an old drone software that they had. And I said, well, did you try our app? Loaded the IP address in, and son of a gun, he was able to control his drone. I know of another one running several Comrex units that are or Flash days, and another one running an old Grass Valley switcher. So,
and I believe we saved a live cost for a TV station as well, on a mobile unit that was out, yeah.
So, anyway, just
it's a neat little app.
Unintended consequences.
That's right.
On that note, I've got to go do my day job. I'm pretty sure you've got a day job that needs to be attended to at some point.
You may have another Zoom meeting to go to now?
It's my second web. I'm done with Zoom. I know. I'm going to turn the camera off and pick up the telephone.
Well, Jeff, really appreciate you checking in with us and sharing these things. Matt, thank you so much.
You are welcome. Anytime.
I know this has been a frustrating series. Software is that way. I mean, whether you're programming in a visual context or just simple, basic, compiled basic or something.
Yeah.
Just anticipating all the problems, you can't dummy proof anything. You really can't.